Yo, what's up, guys? It's Noah here, breaking down the NBA slate on Draftkings and Yahoo for Sunday, February the 9th. We do have a pretty nice 6-game slate for Sunday. I haven't been making videos for the Sunday slates. Those are kind of my quote-unquote day offs for making videos, but I did want to get a video out for this slate. I do plan on playing. There's a lot of injuries to watch today, which always makes it a fun slate whenever you have potential value plays, multiple ways to go. Those are usually the slates I like playing, the slates I have the most success in. So we'll talk about all these injuries we need to watch heading into Sunday. As always, guys, these are my first looks at the slate. I am recording this video on Saturday night. I will have some updated thoughts on the slate posted on Patreon later Sunday afternoon, probably an hour or two before lock. I will have updated core plays posted over on Patreon. Normally, I write an article for the slate, but that's just saved for Monday through Friday. Monday through Friday, I'll write my article, which is usually anywhere from 8 to 10 pages long, going through each position, talking about my favorite plays at each position. On Patreon, that will be posted Monday through Friday, but because it's the weekend, I don't write the article on the weekends. I just give updated core plays. I also give updated core plays throughout the week as well. So I will have some updated core plays posted for this slate. This is definitely a slate where updates are going to be key because of all the injuries we have to watch. Guys like Trae Young, Joel Embiid, Jimmy Butler. I think there's some other ones. Al Horford questionable, Zach LaVine questionable. So I'll have my full thoughts, updated core plays over on Patreon later today. If you do want to check that out, it is linked down below in the description. But like always, guys, before we get started, I would definitely appreciate it if you would hit the like button down below. Hit that subscribe button as well. If you are new here, thank you so much for clicking on the video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Click the notification bell as well. That way you will get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. Also, if you would like to stay up to date with me and just my social life, my DFS life, I guess, you can follow me on Twitter, link down below. I am pretty active over on Twitter. If you want to give me a follow, I would appreciate it at DFS by Noah. But yeah, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at Sunday's 6-game slate. We will start off at point guard. We're at the top. We got James Harden, 11,700, most expensive point guard and most expensive player overall on the slate. So I don't think this is going to be a slate I really go out of my way to play James Harden. With Russell Westbrook back and expected to play today, Westbrook sat out Friday night because of rest. He's going to play today. Harden was very disappointing Friday night, which was a big surprise. He only played 30 minutes in a blowout loss to the Suns, only had 46 Draftkings points. One of the reasons I had like a rough night Friday night, I didn't have the best DFS night, was because I was very heavy on Harden. I just usually, anytime Westbrook's out, I always lock in Harden. I mean, the upside for him is just massive. This guy literally has 90, 100-point upside when you take Russell Westbrook off the floor. With Westbrook playing today, the usage will go down a little bit. Harden still averages like 1.6 fantasy points per minute, even with Westbrook on the floor. He's a fine option today, especially if some of these guys that are questionable wind up out. That is going to open up some value. It might be pretty easy to get to Harden, but I don't think he's going to be a guy I go out of my way to play today. The guy that I actually like the most at point guard, if he plays, is Trae Young. I like him quite a bit here in this matchup against the Knicks. This is a really good spot. We know the Knicks are not a good defensive team. Looking at defensive rating this season, they are one of the worst defensive teams. In terms of defensive rating, they rank 22nd in defensive rating. The Knicks don't really play at a fast pace. They actually play at a pretty slow pace. They are all the way down here at 21st in pace this season. But we know the Hawks play fast. We know how much Trae Young's just going to run this offense. We'll take a look at his usage this season with the Hawks. He's a very high usage player, about a 35% usage rate, averages like 1.5 or close to that fantasy points per minute. Yeah, 34.9% usage rate on the season, averaging 1.44 fantasy points per minute, 42 or nearly a 42% assist percentage. I mean, we know Trae Young's going to play 36, 38 minutes if it's a close game, which this game against the Knicks should be. Not last year, but this season against the Knicks when they did play, Trae Young had 61 DraftKings points in 41 minutes against them. Honestly, wouldn't be surprised if he puts up a similar line today. If he plays, he's honestly one of my favorite studs to pay up for today. But because we don't have the news regarding his status right now, as I'm recording this Saturday night, I won't include him in the early core. Like I said, guys, if you want to get my updated core plays, those will be posted on Patreon later today. But then you have like Damian Lillard at 10,200. So Lillard's been playing just really well recently. Did have sort of that down game against the Spurs, but bounced back in a big way against the Jazz, going for 66 DraftKings points in 43 minutes. This is another relatively tough spot for him against the Heat. He did put up a big game earlier this season against the Heat. I believe CJ McCollum was out that game, though, which is kind of one of the reasons Lillard played really well. 62 DraftKings points in 41 minutes. Jimmy Butler's not expected to play. He's doubtful for the Heat, which makes it a little bit of an easier matchup. But this is still a really good Heat defense. At 10-2, I think with him and Trae Young being closely priced together, honestly, I think I'd rather play Trae Young over Damian Lillard. Now, if Trae Young's out and you want to go to Lillard, I'm fine with that. But I think I do slightly prefer Young. Westbrook is also fine to go to as well. 9,800 against the Jazz. Not the best spot, but Westbrook, when this dude's healthy and he's on the court, I mean, he's just been so productive lately. The game log is so pretty. Over 50 DraftKings points in 9 of his last 10 games. He's been incredibly consistent. Even in games where James Harden plays really well, it seems like Westbrook can also put up big games. In those games that Harden has struggled lately, Westbrook has been putting up big games in those games as well. I definitely like him at his DraftKings price of $9,800. I think I do prefer Trae Young for $600 more, but if Trae Young doesn't play and you want to drop down to Westbrook, same with Lillard, I have no problem with that. Now, if Joel Embiid winds up sitting, I think Ben Simmons at $8,600, even in a somewhat tough matchup against the Bulls, like Ben Simmons would have become a very strong play if Embiid winds up out. Like, it would definitely be the Simmons and Tobias Harris show, because there's a chance Al Horford misses, and if Horford and Embiid are both out, it's literally going to be Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris just doing all the heavy lifting for the Sixers offense. So even with this price up to $8,600, depending on if Joel Embiid's in or out, I think if Embiid plays, I probably would rather roster him. He's $8,200 in a smash spot against the Bulls. If Embiid plays, I'd rather roster him for $8,200, but if he's out, I think Simmons becomes a very appealing option. Then in this mid-range, you have guys like Elfrid Payton. I do like Elfrid Payton a lot in this matchup. His price is up to $7,500 on DraftKings, so he's not a must-play by any means. I think if I'm going to play Elfrid Payton, it would probably be over on Yahoo. If we look at his price tag over there, he's $28. You have him and John Morant at the same price. Like, just comparing Morant and Payton on DraftKings, like, Payton is $7,500, Morant's $6,300. You can tell that Morant's probably the better play there given the savings, but on Yahoo, where they're the same price tag, I would definitely prefer Payton over Morant. I mean, the dude's just been playing so well recently. Had another solid game Saturday night against Detroit. Played nearly 30 minutes, 36 fantasy points, 52 fantasy points against Orlando. He did have 7 steals in that game, so that was a bit of an outlier. But 54 fantasy points against Cleveland, 43 against Memphis. Like, he's contributing in all categories. He's racking up steals. It's a great matchup against the Hawks. I do like Elfrid Payton a lot at his Yahoo salary. I think he really stands out as one of the better mid-range options. We're going to talk about John Morant in a second. I really like John Morant on DraftKings, but where he's the same price as Payton on Yahoo, I think I would rather play Payton there. But let's talk about John Morant. 6,300 on DK. This guy's really been struggling recently. You look at the game log, not very pretty. Under 27 DraftKings points in 4 straight games. But these have been some really tough matchups. He had a good matchup against the Pelicans, but only played 27 minutes because of the blowout. So that kind of hurt his upside. Against Detroit, only 27 minutes. Against Dallas, somewhat tough matchup, 31 minutes, just 26 DK points. Had a tough matchup against Philly, 28 minutes, 25 DK points. Now he gets a smash spot against the Wizards, where he should just absolutely go off against this Wizards team. Wizards, we know, are one of the worst defensive teams in the league. They're actually dead last in defensive rating. They also play at a very fast pace. Both these teams play at very fast paces. I mean, you have the Grizzlies playing at the 5th fastest pace, the Wizards playing at the 6th. If we look at totals for this game, right now this game does have a 240 total, which is the highest on the slate. We only have 2 of the 6 games with a total, but I assume once we get all the games, this Memphis-Washington game is still going to have the highest total on the slate. So I really like targeting this game. I really like John Morant at his DraftKings salary. I think with him struggling as of late, that might keep his ownership somewhat low, keep his ownership in check. I feel like if Morant has been playing, like if he would have put up a big game against the Sixers, he would probably be really popular today. But because he's been struggling recently, I think we might get Morant somewhat, I won't say he's going to be low owned, but he might come in like maybe 10 to 20% owned, which is way too low for this matchup. Morant has 45 point upside here. If the game's close, he should play probably close to 32 minutes, which is plenty for him to hit value at this salary. So I like him a lot on DK. I think we need to talk about some of these Clippers guys. So Lou Williams, 6,800 on DraftKings, relatively expensive today. This is a back-to-back for the Clippers, so I am going into this slate assuming that Kawhi Leonard does not play. Kawhi Leonard has not played on any back-to-backs this season, so that's why I'm assuming he's going to be out today, which is going to make a guy like Lou Williams a very appealing option. with his price at 6,800, he's not a must-play by any means. Like, you could play Donovan Mitchell for a couple $100 more. I wouldn't mind that at all. You could save salary and play John Morant. You could save almost $1,000 and play a guy like Goran Dragic, Kendrick Nunn. Those two guys, they burned me Friday night when Jimmy Butler was out. But with Jimmy Butler expect to be out again, I'll be going right back to those Miami guys. So don't really think Lou Will's a guy you have to go to on DK. But if we look at his Yahoo salary, I think at $22 on Yahoo, that is way too cheap for Lou Williams, assuming that Kawhi Leonard is not going to play today. We'll take a look at the Clippers' usage this season with Kawhi off the floor. There are three pretty big beneficiaries here, and that's Lou Williams, Montrezl Harrell, and Paul George. Those guys have really benefited. I didn't mean to take PG off. I meant to take Kawhi off. My mistake. But those are the three guys that have really benefited with Kawhi off the floor, as you would expect. Lou Williams, 870 minutes played this season with Kawhi off the floor. About a 33% usage rate, averaging 1.24 fantasy points per minute with about a 38% assist percentage. Montrezl Harrell, about a 30% usage rate, averaging 1.22 fantasy points per minute. And then Paul George, we'll talk about him later on in the video, 34% usage rate, averaging 1.56 fantasy points per minute. Just looking at the differential, a lot of these guys see big bumps. Like PG sees over a 3% bump in usage. His fantasy point per minute average skyrockets as well. Montrezl Harrell, a 4% bump in usage, sees a little bit of a bump in his fantasy point per minute average. And then Lou Williams also sees a 4% bump in usage, sees a nice boost in his fantasy point per minute average as well. So I like targeting all three of those guys today, assuming Kawhi doesn't play. And I think at Lou Williams' Yahoo salary of just $22, especially in a great matchup against Cleveland. Cleveland been one of the worst defensive teams versus point guards this season, and just one of the worst defensive teams overall. Lou Will can easily pay off that Yahoo salary of $22. But then we have the Miami guys. You got Goran Dragic at $5,900, Kendrick Nunn at $5,600. We're going to talk about some other point guards I like today. So I don't think you have to I really like Dragic at $5,900. I'm not going to include him in the Draftkings core because there's another point guard I like. I don't want to put 3 point guards in the core. I want to try and give you guys some flexibility if you do want to build around my core plays. So I try and leave some open roster spots, especially like the util spot. I try and leave that open so you have some flexibility with your lineups. So for that reason, I'm going to put Kendrick Nunn in the core, especially because you can play him at shooting guard. If Dragic was shooting guard eligible, I'd put him in here, but we will talk about a cheap point guard that I like today. But Nunn, $5,600, I do like quite a bit today with Tyler Hero already ruled out and Jimmy Butler doubtful. I was very heavy on these guys Friday night against the Kings. It didn't work out. They had relatively rough games. I mean, Kendrick Nunn was still fine. He had 28 Draftkings points in 34 minutes. Obviously, that's not great. You want more than that at a $4,800 salary. The price tag did come up, so he's not like as good of a play as he was on the last slate. But I still like these guys a ton. They do see nice bumps in usage with Jimmy Butler off the floor. Jimmy Butler is a high usage player. He's the highest usage player on this team. So getting him off the floor, there are going to be a good amount of beneficiaries. We can also take Tyler Hero off because we do know that Tyler Hero is not going to play today. The Heat do have Andre Iguodala, Jay Crowder, Solomon Hill now on the team. Those guys are going to be available to play, but we don't know exactly what their minutes are going to look like. I saw reports that Andre Iguodala would be available to play, but we're not exactly sure if he's going to even touch the floor, if he's going to actually be in the rotation. So I don't think those guys are going to impact some of these Miami guys that much. Dragic, still a very productive player with both Hero and Butler off the floor, averaging 1.16 fantasy points per minute, 27% usage rate. Kendrick Nunn averaging close to a fantasy point per minute, 24% usage rate. Bam Adebayo really benefits. We could take Justice Winslow off because, he's not on the team anymore. We'll do that real quick, see if we get a little bit of a spike in the usage. Forgot to take off Winslow. I imagine a guy like Dragic, Nunn would probably get a small boost as well. Actually, Dragic saw a bump down, but 161 minutes this season for Dragic with all those guys off the floor, 28% usage rate, so actually sees a little bit of a bump in usage, averaging over a fantasy point per minute. Like I said, Kendrick Nunn averaging a fantasy point per minute. These guys are going to play big minutes as well, especially like Kendrick Nunn. He got 34 minutes last game. With both Hero and Butler out, that frees up a lot of minutes in the backcourt that are going to be soaked up by a guy like Kendrick Nunn. With shooting guard eligibility on DraftKings, I like him a lot at $5,600. I will definitely be going right back to him today. It is a great matchup against Portland. Bad defensive team, a team that plays relatively fast as well. Portland playing at the 11th fastest pace this season. So I like those guys. And then in the 5K range and below for value at point guard, I think we do need to talk about Ish Smith as a value option. So last game with Isaiah Thomas traded, and I believe someone else got traded. I can't remember. I know Isaiah Thomas traded, though, who was the starting point guard for the Wizards. Shabazz Napier, he got traded. Or he's on the team now, excuse me. I think it was mainly IT. Someone else, I thought there was another point guard. Maybe Jordan McRae, yeah. It was Jordan McRae that got traded. So McRae and Thomas both no longer on the Wizards. That has opened the door for guys like Ish Smith to get more minutes, and we saw that Friday night against Dallas. He played 30 minutes and had 34 DraftKings points. He did start that game, was very productive, contributed in all categories, had 14 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, a block and a steal. I mean, I'd expect Ish Smith to get about 30 to 32 minutes again. At 5K, he could easily pay off this salary, especially in a fast-paced game against Memphis. Memphis not good defensively versus point guards. This game's going to have a ton of points scored in it. I like targeting this game and having a lot of pieces of it. So at 5K, I think Ish Smith is still a little bit too cheap today, assuming he's going to continue to start and get about 30 to 32 minutes. I do like him a lot at his DraftKings salary. And then for value, if Trae Young's out, I don't mind playing Jeff Teague at 4,700. Disappointed last game, but the minutes should be there for him. He's going to continue to start. It's a good matchup. I think he's in play. There was one more guy. RJ Barrett got the start Saturday night. Didn't have the greatest game, but he's 4,600 today against the Hawks. Assuming he starts again, I think RJ Barrett is definitely in play as a value. Brandon Goodwin also had a big game off the bench with Trae Young out last game. I think he'd be a fine option to go to as well at 3,800 if Trae Young misses. But let's go ahead and talk about some shooting guard plays now. So at shooting guard, you got Bradley Beal for 9,900 against the Grizzlies. I do like Bradley Beal a lot in this matchup. I mean, very similar to like Russell Westbrook, Bradley Beal has just been incredibly consistent as of late. Since getting like back under his belt, I guess, or since getting back on his feet, since coming back from injury, the minutes have been way up for him. The fantasy production has also been way more consistent. 58, 51, 53, pretty much putting up about 48 plus DraftKings points in like 8 straight games, I believe it is. Yeah, 8 straight games for Beal with 48 or more DK points, giving you a very solid floor right now. We obviously this is a guy that has a 55, 60 point ceiling. And in a fast-paced game like this against the Grizzlies, there is definitely 55, 60 point upside for Bradley Beal today. He put up 56 DK points earlier this season against the Grizzlies. I wouldn't be surprised if he puts up a similar line today. He is one of my favorite studs along with Trae Young. I think if Trae Young doesn't wind up playing today, I do like going to Bradley Beal quite a bit on DraftKings at 9,900. We will talk about Paul George later on, who I like a lot. I think there's going to be some good value today, so it should be easy to get multiple studs in if that's the route you want to take. And Beal at 9,900 in this matchup, I like a lot today. Definitely my favorite shooting guard to pay up for. I would much rather save almost $2,000 and play him over a guy like James Harden. Zach LaVine's questionable. Big injury to watch. Even if he plays, I really have no interest in him. But if he's out, that's going to open up opportunity for guys like Tomas Satoransky. Maybe someone like Ryan Arcidiacono could get into the starting lineup. Kobe White might get more usage. So definitely worth talking about that. This is a 6 o'clock game. So the Embiid and LaVine news we will know before lock, which is definitely nice. I mean, we won't have to wait on that. Should get an update probably in the afternoon, if not like after a shoot around. Donovan Mitchell, I think, is a fine play to go to in this pace-up spot against Houston, 7,300. You could definitely look to him. If Trae Young's out, Kevin Huerter, we saw him have a big game last game with Trae Young out. Does pick up a little bit more usage, more opportunity with Young off the floor. Against the Knicks at 6,100, he would for sure be in play for me. Dylan Brooks, prices come way down on DraftKings. He's 4,900 today against the Wizards. He's been in a little bit of a slump recently along with John Morant, but I definitely don't mind going to Dylan Brooks even though he's been struggling recently. This is still a guy that's going to play 30, 32 minutes if it's a close game. Put up 40 DK points earlier this season against the Wizards for what that's worth. I mean, really all that needs to be said is that this game's going to be played at such a fast pace. Going to be a ton of points scored here. It should be a close game, which is pretty much a gold mine for DFS. Anytime you get high-scoring games or games with high totals, close spreads, that's really what you want in NBA DFS. But I think that's probably it for shooting guard plays. Just talking about guys, haven't already mentioned. You got these Chicago guys that could become values if Zach LaVine were to wind up out, like Ryan Arcidiacono. Court Moss maybe could become an option if Embiid winds up sitting. We saw him have a big game last game with Embiid getting hurt. If Andre Iguodala can play, he might be interesting to go to. Probably a risky option because we don't know what his minutes are going to look like. Hasn't touched the floor at all this season. This would be his first game playing. He didn't touch the floor at all when he was with Memphis. Iguodala can be a productive fantasy player when given the minutes. maybe you could go there, but it's very uncertain what his workload's going to look like, so hard to have a ton of confidence in him. And with it being a big slate, or somewhat big slate, probably could find better value. If Embiid were to sit, Josh Richardson could maybe become an option. First game back from injury, only played 15 minutes off the bench, which is obviously a concern. But his price is down to 4,400. If he can play his full minutes and is not limited, like if we can get 30 minutes from Josh Richardson with potentially Embiid out and maybe Al Horford out as well, he would be a really good value play, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see there. So let's go ahead and talk about small forward now. So at small forward, you have Kawhi Leonard at the top, but like I said, this is a back-to-back for the Clippers. I'm assuming Kawhi Leonard does not play today since he hasn't played at all on back-to-backs this season, which definitely makes a guy like Paul George a very interesting option. 8,100 on DraftKings. The price tag really wasn't adjusted for this being a back-to-back for the Clippers. Price tag really didn't move, and this is a smash spot against Cleveland, one of the worst defensive teams in the league. I pulled up the usage earlier in this video, but we'll pull it up again just so you guys can see. With Kawhi Leonard off the floor this season, Paul George obviously sees a big bump in his usage and his fantasy production. Usage rate is up to 34%, averaging over 1.5 fantasy points per minute, 25% assist percentage. Paul George is a great play today. I'm assuming that he gets his full allotment of minutes, even though it's a back-to-back. He's been playing on back-to-backs recently. Like he played on, let's see here. I know they had a back-to-back. Yeah, like December 21st, only played 26 minutes on the front end of the back-to-back, but a lot of that had to do with the blowout. They had a close game against OKC, and he played 34 minutes in that game. So I'm assuming he's a full go today. He's played on all back-to-backs this season, so I'm assuming he plays and Kawhi is out, which makes him one of the more appealing options on the slate, especially in a great matchup against Cleveland. Love PG at his Yahoo salary of $35, and I think at 8,100 on DraftKings, he stands out as a great option to go to there as well. I don't think PG is going to get like 38 minutes today. Like he hasn't been playing that amount of minutes. They've been limiting him a little bit. Some of that has to do with blowout. Like they have had some blowouts recently against Sacramento, somewhat against Miami. Only getting about 26, 28 minutes, which is somewhat of a concern. I think if the game's close, though, you probably get 30, 32 minutes from Paul George, maybe more, which makes him an awesome play at 8,100, especially if Kawhi does wind up sitting. If Kawhi plays, obviously we're going to have to go back to the drawing board, but I'm going into this slate assuming he's out. Then you have a guy like Tobias Harris, who is a very appealing option if Joel Embiid winds up sitting. If both Embiid and Horford are out, I think guys like Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris become very strong options and would be guys I'd be pretty heavy on. Marcus Morris did not play Saturday. We'll be interested to see if he's able to make his debut with the Clippers on Sunday. He's very cheap on Yahoo. If we look over here, Marcus Morris, $25. He was actually, I think he was $18 on Sunday or Saturday slate, which is weird. They bumped up his price a lot to 25, so maybe not as good of a play as I thought. I'd definitely rather play Tobias Harris over him. But I guess that is something worth keeping an eye on. Maybe Marcus Morris can play today. We'll kind of have to wait and see. I imagine he starts whenever he becomes available, which maybe could make him an option, especially with Kawhi expected to not play today. But other small forwards we could look to, you have the Miami guys who could play, Duncan Robinson, Derrick Jones Jr., 5,200, 4,900. Choosing between those two guys, I think I would side with Derrick Jones Jr. I know Duncan Robinson had the better game last game. He played 42 minutes, which was, really good to see. He's going to get big minutes. He's been playing big minutes recently. I think he's really cheap on Yahoo. You got Duncan Robinson down here at $12. He's probably one of the better values on the slate overall. Now, maybe if some of these injuries like Trae Young, Joel Embiid, Al Horford, Zach LaVine, if these guys wind up out, maybe that'll open up better value. But for right now, small forward, I think Duncan Robinson at $12 on Yahoo looks like a great value. You have Derrick Jones Jr. as well. You could play at $17. I do expect both those guys to get relatively big minutes, and it is a really good spot against Portland. So both of them are in play for me today. Then you have like Chandler Hutchison you could also play. He would get a little bit of a bump with LaVine out. He's been very productive since moving into the starting lineup. 28, 32 minutes last two games. Still somewhat cheap on DraftKings. I don't mind going to him. I'd like him even more if LaVine were to wind up sitting. But yeah, I think we covered all the small forwards for today. Let's go ahead and talk about power forward now and look at this position. So you got John Collins at the top for 8,700. Don't really like John Collins at this salary. Now, if Trae Young winds up out, John Collins could be a guy you look to. He has benefited with Trae Young off the floor. His fantasy production does see a little bit of a spike. He did put up 49 DraftKings points in Friday night's game against Boston with Trae Young out and played 38 minutes. This is a really good matchup against the Knicks. I don't mind going to him at 8,700, but that's going to depend on the status of Trae Young. I think on Yahoo, my favorite power forward to go to, given pricing, is definitely Julius Randle. I think he stands out as one of the better plays overall on Yahoo. Only $33. Had a disappointing game for Saturday night against Detroit. 34 minutes, only 31 fantasy points. I would expect him to bounce back in a big way here against the Hawks. This is such a good spot for Julius Randle. I'm pretty sure he's had some monster games against them earlier this season. They played on December 17th. It was a blowout. Only played 22 minutes, still had 32 fantasy points. I thought he had like a 50 burger against the Hawks, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe. Have they only played once this season? I thought they had played twice. Did I miss it? Okay, maybe they've only played once. I thought they had played multiple times this season, but regardless, I mean, this is a smash spot for Julius Randle. We know the Hawks are a terrible defensive team, second to last, or third to last, I should say, 28th in defensive rating. They are a very bad rebounding team, which I think is worth noting. The Hawks do rank 27th in rebound percentage, so this could be a spot where Julius Randle is really able to dominate on the glass. I like him a lot at his Yahoo salary of $33. I think that's just way too cheap. On Draftkings, where he's $8,400, that's a pretty hefty price tag. I think there's other ways I'd rather go today. There's other guys I'd rather target in that price range, but at his Yahoo salary, Randle definitely stands out as one of the better power forward plays overall. But then other power forwards, you got the Philly guys you could consider here if Embiid's out. If Embiid is out and Al Horford plays, I think Al Horford at $5,700 will become a great option, probably one of the best plays on the slate. But that'll just kind of have to be news we wait and see on heading into Sunday. Other power forwards, I mean, Thad Young's going to play 32 minutes with how thin Chicago's front court is right now. It's not the best matchup against Philly, but Young's shown somewhat of a ceiling recently. I mean, 34 DK points against Toronto. If he's going to play 32 minutes, he'd be a fine play, but not like a core play for me by any means. Honestly, that's probably it at power forward. I feel like this is a position I'm probably going to be spending up at. I really like Julius Randle. If Embiid's out, I really like Tobias Harris. If Embiid's out and Al Horford plays, Al Horford becomes a great option at $5,700. Even Jaren Jackson Jr. in a fast-paced game against the Wizards makes a lot of sense. Davis Bertans also in that game makes plenty of sense. He's been getting good run recently, 30-plus minutes in 3 straight games. Very productive as well with 37 DK points in his last 2. That's kind of where I'm looking to at power forward now. Talking about the center position, just looking here before we end the video. So you do have Andre Drummond at the top, $9,400 against the Cavs, or not against the Cavs, against the Clippers, expected to make his debut for the Cavs. It's going to be interesting to see how Drummond plays alongside Kevin Love. I think that is going to hurt his fantasy production. I think we're going to see him not be as productive as he was in Detroit. Like with all those guys out for Detroit, with Blake Griffin, Derrick Rose, all those guys out recently. I mean, Drummond had been putting up 50, 60 burgers. I think his production is going to take a hit playing in Cleveland. At $9,400, I don't think he's a guy I really want to spend up for today. They still have Tristan Thompson on the roster. They still have Larry Nance. They have guys they can give minutes to. I don't think Drummond's going to play 36, 38 minutes a night like he had been in Detroit. So I'm kind of off of him today. There's other ways I'd rather spend at center. Like, give me Randle for cheaper. Bam Adebayo I like a lot today. With Jimmy Butler out, he sees a bump in usage. Great matchup against Portland and against Whiteside, who's not a good defender at all. 35 minutes for Bam against Portland earlier this season, 41 DK points. Had 40 DK points in 36 minutes against the Kings on Friday night with Jimmy Butler out. I do like him at $8,300. I think Joel Embiid, though, is probably my favorite center play overall, assuming he can play today. We don't have this his status right now, which obviously is something worth monitoring. He got hurt in Friday night's game against the Grizzlies and was not able to return. It looks like it was a stiff neck, I think. Embiid didn't play in the second half of Friday's game against the Grizzlies with Al Horford Achilles. What's his question? Due to a stiff neck. Yeah, so it was a neck injury Friday night for Embiid that allowed him or kept him from returning. It sucks if you rostered Embiid Friday night because he was really productive. He had played 16 minutes. I think it got towards the end of the first quarter or end of the first half. He got hurt right at the end of the first half. He had 33 Draftkings points in the first half. He was on pace for a monster game and then was not able to return, which sucks if you rostered him. If he can play today, though, I mean, this is an absolute smash spot for Joel Embiid. He becomes one of my favorite plays on the slate if he can go, but because we don't have his status right now, I don't want to include him in the core plays. Like I said, guys, at the beginning of the video, I will have my updated core plays posted on Patreon about an hour or two before lock. If you want to check those out, you can check out my Patreon link down below. I imagine if Embiid's in, he might make the core plays depending on what other kind of value opens up. So, like Bam, I like, Randall, I like, but I would definitely prefer Embiid over those guys if he can play. Joe Val, I actually like quite a bit though as well. He's a little bit cheaper, $1,000 cheaper. I think Joe Val probably gets no ownership today, especially with some of the guys priced around him. I mean, you do have Whiteside for a couple $100s more. We know how productive of a player Whiteside is on a point per minute basis. If you want to buy into a revenge game, this is a revenge game for him against Miami. He had already faced them once this season, did have a good game, 48 DK points in 32 minutes. He's actually probable, although DraftKings has him listed as questionable. He's expected to play today. So I do like him at his price tag. I like Joe Val a lot, though, at his price, or I wouldn't say at his price on DraftKings, but at what his ownership should be today. I think Joe Val is going to be incredibly low owned, which makes him an awesome tournament play in a smash spot against the Wizards. We know how bad this team is defensively. Talked about it throughout the video. Dead last in defensive rating. Terrible rebounding team as well, which I think is great for Joe Val's upside. The Wizards are dead last in rebound percentage. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we get one of those vintage Joe Val games where he goes for like 25 and 15, kind of like he did against Detroit. 30 minutes, 26 points, 17 rebounds, 2 assists, 4 blocks, 59 DraftKings points. Like, Joe Val has that kind of upside in this matchup. If he gets the minutes, which he has been recently, he's been playing about 28 to 30 minutes in close games. I love him on today's slate. I think he's a great tournament play. I think he's going to be very low owned, which is always intriguing whenever you get Joe Val low ownership. I think at his Yahoo salary of $27, he maybe gets more ownership over there, but still, I like him a lot. Even if he's going to be higher owned on Yahoo, I still think at $27, looks like one of the better options to go to there as well. So that's kind of what I'm liking on Yahoo. I like Joe Val overall, though. One of my favorite center plays. There are other guys you could go to, like Embiid, who I like if he plays. Whiteside at his price. Bam, you could look to. But Joe Val, I think, gives you a lot of upside and should come in somewhat low owned today. Then you have Montrezl Harrell, who you could also play. With Kawhi Leonard out, he sees a bump in usage. The minutes have been weighed down for Montrezl Harrell, which is a bit of a concern. Not getting like 30 to 32 minutes, only been playing about 25 to 28 minutes lately. But maybe with Kawhi out, you see Montrezl Harrell pick up a few more minutes, which would make him pretty appealing at 6,200. You got guys like Jackson Jr., Horford I talked about, you could play there. I think that's probably it, though, for center. I don't think there's really any value plays here. Great matchup for Mitchell Robinson, but you just don't know what his minutes are going to look like, so hard to trust him. Kelly Olynyk's been starting recently, but the minutes have just not been there, so hard to trust him as well. So, yeah, guys, I think that's it for center plays. I guess we could talk about Philly. So, if Embiid and Horford are both out, I would imagine that either Norvell Pell or Kyle O'Quinn starts at center. Whichever one of those two guys starts, whether it's O'Quinn or Pell, both of them are minimum salary on DraftKings. They would arguably become one of the top value plays on the slate. That'll just kind of have to be news we wait and see on. Really, I just want to play whichever one starts because that's the one I would like the most. Maybe even, well, I guess if Embiid were to sit and then Horford plays, I assume Horford starts at center. I don't think they would start those guys alongside each other. But if both of those two are out, then yeah, you'll definitely see either one of O'Quinn or Pell in the starting lineup, which would make them very appealing value options and a great matchup. But like I said, guys, recording this the night before, we'll just kind of have to wait and see what happens there with Philly. Got to keep an eye on the status of Zach LaVine as well. Trae Young also questionable, so those are kind of the big injuries we need to watch heading into Sunday's slate. But yeah, guys, I think we covered it all. Covered this 6-gamer. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully it did help you. If you did enjoy, as always, I would appreciate it if you would drop a like down below. Before you do get out of here, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well. You can click the notification bell, so that way you do get notified every time I upload. If you haven't yet, you can also follow me on Twitter. Link down below is my Twitter account at DFS by Noah. Also linked down below is my Patreon. If you want to check out all the exclusive content I have to offer over there, get access to my updated core plays. Those will be posted on Patreon later on Sunday, about an hour or two before lock. But yeah, guys, best of luck tonight. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully it helped, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.